My name is Cole Agar, and I'm the Director of Graduate and International Programs at Peking University's School of Transnational Law. In this video, I'll be discussing a number of questions we often get related to the issue of living in China. So let's jump right in. One of the most common questions is, do you need to be able to speak Chinese? And no, you don't need to be able to speak any Chinese for our program. You may find that once you go off campus, a language like English is just a lot less common in China than in many countries in the world. But you'll get good at using different apps on your phone to get around this, and it's a great incentive to study Chinese. And that goes to another common question, which is there are a lot of opportunities while you're in our program to study Chinese. So the three things that many of our students do is you can take Chinese language classes right on campus. Some students will hire a Chinese language tutor for one-on-one training. And some students who really want to push their Chinese to the next level will even enroll in an intensive Chinese language school alongside their legal studies. The food is a polarizing issue. China has a long and proud culinary tradition, but you will also find bones in all your meat and some flavors you really struggle with. I think the food is one of the best parts about being in China, but we certainly have students who never really adjust to it, and it's a struggle. And that goes to another question. You can absolutely find Western food. It's, in a city like Shenzhen, you can find essentially anything today. Can it be challenging, though, to be a vegetarian in China? Yes. I can't tell you if you're going to have culture shock. That's a very personal thing. It's a lot about perspective and attitude. What I will say is that the differences are half of the educational experience. So if you try to focus more on embracing the things that are not like your home country, rather than letting them frustrate you, you'll have a very positive experience. Is it hard to get to know Chinese people? That's actually how I often hear this question phrased. Chinese people are all different, just like Danish people are all different. So I'm going to answer a slightly different version of the question, which is it hard to get to know your Chinese colleagues while you are in the program? And I do hear from some of our international students that this can be a challenge. What I will say is that it's going to be easier in a program like ours than many LLMs. And that's because we don't do something that many LLM programs do. And that is specifically, we don't put all of our international LLM students in kind of a segregated pod where you're marched to all the same classes with the other foreign students. At the School of Transnational Law, you will take essentially all your classes side by side with your Chinese classmates. And, as a result, that opportunity to build friendships, to build out your network while you're studying in China can really end up being one of the most valuable parts of studying in a program like ours. We get some concern from applicants on the issue of religion, and I think there's some misconceptions in the West, especially from countries like the United States, about hostility between China and religion. In general, it seems more like Chinese people just don't care that much about religion. My advice would be, don't go out onto the street corner trying to convert people, and you're going to be just fine. It is certainly much cheaper living and studying on our campus in China than if you were in the United States or Western Europe. It's not as cheap as it used to be. There are definitely some good hospitals in Shenzhen and next door in Hong Kong. Actually, we had an LL.M student recently. Him and his wife had their first child at a hospital in Shenzhen, and it sounds like it was a pretty positive experience. Traveling in China is fantastic. If you've been following anything about China's modern development, then you'll know that investing in its domestic transportation infrastructure has been a huge priority for China. So, there's high-speed rail all over the country, domestic flights. Most of the cities have a subway system. My advice would be, if you end up being admitted to our program, budget some time to see as much of the country as possible. It's really a fantastic place to travel. And a catch-all question that we often get is something like, what's the hardest thing about living in China? So it's a good question to end on. And it's not the food, it's not the culture or the language barrier, it is the internet. And mostly that's because all the Google products and services that we're used to are blocked in China. My best advice is maybe if you use Gmail, switch to something like Outlook, try getting used to using Bing as a search engine, and otherwise you'll find ways around the problem, but it will probably stay a complaint during your entire time in China. That's it for the questions in this video. If you have any other questions about life in China or anything else related to our program, please feel free to reach out to our admissions office at any time. And I will put a link to that below in the description.